the difference that I'm seeing in the conversations I'm having with schools just in the last week, just since the statutory guidance has changed, is really significant. And we're going from conversations where I'm laying out programs that we'd like to involve them in, and they're saying, that's great, that's exactly what we'd like to do, but the logistics is so challenging, to the conversation now being, we have to do this, how do we make it work?
Welcome back to Spotlight Talk. Today we're joined by Sam Holmes, CEO of Causeway Education. Sam, welcome.
Thank you.
Sam, I thought we'd start with getting a bit of a sense of your own background and your own career journey today. Can you give us a sense of how you've come into this space and sort of the various things that you've done up to now?
Yeah, definitely. So I started off in teaching, taught for 7 years, and the last 5 years of that I was coordinator for English as an additional language in a school in Lambeth. So got very into seeing how a topic that's important across the school, language development, is kind of integrated into different departments and how different teachers are taking that on. And although at the time I didn't go straight into careers education, looking back, I think that's where my interest in sort of a systems approach and kind of institutional improvement came from.
Yeah, so I mean that's really interesting. So in terms of the teaching you were doing, and you were seeing how, because that touches every part of that curriculum, I guess, and that there is a correlation there between how we see careers education in a decentralized kind of model of leadership and so on.
Yeah.
Is there sort of similarities between what you were doing and this? Or
I think so. It's about that holistic view of young people. And I think we're starting to understand as a sector that careers education is about journey planning. It's about being kind of future ready. And we're setting young people up to be successful in the world. And yes, a lot of them, it will be getting a job, but actually your career is much bigger than that. It's about your journey. There's some young people who will never get paid employment for, potentially with special needs. We've had settings, different schools and colleges that work with very high needs young people on our careers leader training. And I've learned a lot from them about the vision you can have for your young people and making sure that a career is not limited to the job that you might get at 18 or 21. It's really thinking about that longer term journey you're going to go on, which can involve all sorts of things. It could involve setting up your own business. It can involve parenthood. It can involve kind of service. You could go into politics, all sorts of things. And we need to have that kind of, if we're going to prepare young people for these really interesting, diverse futures, we need to have a really holistic approach to careers in schools, right down to the kind of skills development and the allowing them to have a vision for themselves. And that big picture then has to translate into the kind of the micro interactions with young people and constantly giving them that space to kind of dream and have big ideas for themselves.
It's really, because we talk about this a lot, don't we, around what is school for, and I think we're going through an era at the moment of policy churn and a lot of change on the policy landscape, mainly aligned with a lot of what you've just said there, I would say, but also technological disruption, and what does that mean? And actually, when you zoom out to look at the world of industry and the changes that we're seeing there, I say it all the time that if you can tell me absolutely factually, this is what this industry will look like in 10 years, whatever that industry is, I'm going to say you're guessing to some extent. And we've just spent the last 20 years trying to tell kids to be coders, and then Google Gemini's come along, now coding better than the mean coder in the world. So that holistic view sort of being baked into everything. So coming on to Causeway, how did Causeway come about? What was the idea, and is that kind of aligned?
Yeah. So I think how we came about is probably quite different to what our vision is now. So we came about originally as a mentoring program. So I was working part-time and also doing my PhD. A good friend and colleague of mine from my university days was working as a university lecturer and involved in a lot of admissions interviews. And he was seeing a lot of students from state schools applying to university who were clearly good enough but weren't performing in the interview context. And we set up our first project, which was a mentoring program helping young people who were on Sutton Trust summer schools with their university applications. And we had a lot of success from that, and it grew from there. But that original focus on A, university, and B, kind of high attaining students has just really broadened out now, where Causeway today is looking at all routes. So we're looking at higher education, apprenticeships, early careers, but we're also looking at kind of the full attainment spectrum. We want to help all young people. And I think that's really important when you work with schools, that when you go in and you say to a school, I just want the students that meet these criteria. It's very difficult. And then that's one of the challenges with modern work experience as well. We've got to put things on for the whole cohort. And so we've progressively moved in that direction now, where we want to have comprehensive offers to schools. We know that when you go via kind of student criteria, you're always going to miss students who are close to those. Like, you look at free school meals. Yes, we want to help young people that are on free school meals, but there'll be students eligible that aren't actually receiving them and won't get the interventions. There'll be students whose families earn £100 more per month and aren't eligible. So, we want to work with whole cohorts in schools where there's high need.
That's really refreshing, and something that we look quite closely at as well, because it's quite frustrating when there obviously lots of organisations want to work with people and be inclusive and try and focus on that socioeconomic disadvantage.
Yeah.
And they'll naturally gravitate towards free school meals and not necessarily think about the wider picture of the pupil premium students who, would be eligible a few years ago, but aren't quite at the moment with current policy, and are missing from accessing that support as well. What would you say is sort of the main mission statement of and driving factor for Causeway Education?
So our mantra is all about progression, not determined by privilege. And like I said, we want to work with the full spectrum of students in the schools where we're needed. But our approach is very much, I used the word journey earlier on when I was talking about careers, and our approach is really thinking about that, being a journey partner for the young people, but also for the institutions that we work with. So some of our programs are longitudinal, in the sense we might be working with a student for a year or so. But even the interventions that aren't, we want to see how they insert in the bigger picture. So we're always helping the employers that we support to think about, okay, if you're doing a one-day event, and let's think about the year group that you're focusing on. What have they done before? What are they doing afterwards? What's the role that your event is playing in the bigger picture? So we're always trying to get everyone that we collaborate with to take that journey view of careers education, as opposed to kind of isolated one-off encounters. However kind of mind-expanding a one-off encounter can be, it's still always going to have a role within a bigger picture.
It's really interesting, because we're at a point at the moment of, there is such a microscope on experiences of the workplace. We've seen the government's commitment to 2 weeks worth of work experience. We know at the Careers Hub that there are more employers, frankly, waking up to the need for this than ever. And I think that's partly due to stagnant labour markets and, other pressures on industry, immigration coming into that mix as well, and sort of restrictions around that. So this holistic view, and is there a tension that you find with all the schools that you're working in? And is there a commonality of tension, I suppose, between wanting to put this holistic view in place as an institution, not having a huge amount of resource and budget to put into it, to be able to go to that specific learner need detail? Like, how far away, in your estimation, are we from being able to do that at a systemic way?
I think it's a really interesting question, that the how far away, because on the one hand, I would say we're really far away from it, but I think we can get there quite quickly.
Right.
Because I think the difference that I'm seeing in the conversations I'm having with schools just in the last week, just since the statutory guidance has changed, is really significant. And we're going from conversations where I'm laying out programs that we'd like to involve them in, and they're saying, that's great, that's exactly what we'd like to do, but the logistics is so challenging, to the conversation now being, we have to do this, how do we make it work? So I think if we can get the schools and employers lined up to engage in these encounters, the thing that's going to really make it work is if we can lighten the load logistically on the schools and employers on that encounter side, so they can focus on the quality of the actual interaction. What we don't want is, with this new pressure, careers leaders in schools who are already, they don't have enough time to do the massive role that they have. If all of that gets soaked up with travel arrangements and phone calls to employers and all of this stuff, they could just sink. What we want them focusing on is really thinking about what goes on inside the school. What does the preparation, the priming activities before those encounters look like? What do the debriefing activities look like afterwards? I was at a law firm that we worked with recently. We were running a kind of what we call a flash internship, so a half day of activity with just 10 students coming into that law firm. And when, they got a tour, they got a talk, they were doing a hands-on activity. It was a really nice event. But when they sat down to do a Q&A with some of the employees, there was a girl who'd been quiet all morning, kind of soaking it all up. And then when they said, "Have you got any questions for us?" she said, "Who are your main rivals as a business?" And I thought, it was fantastic to see like that level of questioning from a year 7, but it was clear that some really good priming activity had gone on in the school. And you think the investment of time and effort to make that event happen is one thing, but going the extra mile to do some really good prep so that when they come, they get absolute most out of it. And that's what I worry that careers leaders won't have the time to do if they get too soaked up in the logistical side. So I think we need to find ways, and I can talk more about that, about how do we take that logistics burden off both the employers and the schools so that the quality of these encounters is really high.
Absolutely. Have you found with the younger years in Key Stage 3 as well, have you found students particularly engaged with that and schools engaging with that, or has it been predominantly with Key Stage 4, Key Stage 5?
So I think that Key Stage 3 students are, in general, and I say this, I suppose, from my teaching background as well, they are naturally interested in workplaces and in getting out of school, and probably Key Stage 4 as well when you have the right setup for them. But I think it's an open goal, like getting young people into these workplaces set up in the right way. They will be interested. They will ask interesting questions. They will get loads from it. So I think it's absolutely the right direction to have this set up. But I think what we want to avoid is there's always that danger in the career space if the statutory guidance says you have to do X number of encounters.
What counts? Yeah.
That we're like, oh, we've done them. We got 100 kids to traipse around this workplace and to kind of listen to a guided tour, and then they went back into school, and we can tick all of that off.
Where's the meaning? There's no skill mapping there. It's just tick box. Yeah.
And I think that's what's good about the meaningful encounter, that there's more guidance has been provided on that, and there are, the quality and careers standard and lots of other ways and also the careers impact system, ways to help schools to really think what is the quality of what those encounters are, because quantity is important. It's kind of an element of quantity because you want that of quality, because you want that diversity of experience. But each of those encounters has got to be worthwhile on its own.
Yeah. We talk a lot about breadth and depth.
Yeah.
And if you spend all your time on breadth, and you've got no way of making that deeper, and it's interesting also when you were talking about time for reflection, priming, this kind of stuff, like what is the prior learning that we're trying to build on here? And because you could also envisage potentially a set of, year 9 students being thrust into that sort of law environment, say, with no preconceived idea of it at all, and just being like almost entrenching the idea that this isn't a place for me, that there's no route for me to go here. And I just think that's so important. And it's always puzzled me, frankly, that careers activities seem to be one of the very, very few things, maybe the only things, that are delivered routinely through curricula in schools without clearly defined learning objectives, without time for reflection and guided reflection afterwards, without a progressive plan. And I get why it is about resource and it is about, but when you're talking about the leadership of this, and it's not just those careers leaders who are literally day in, day out on the phone to those employers trying to do the best for their students. It's not trying to bash that. It's saying, well, we need more structure and more strategy around that.
Yeah. And I think one of the issues is if you were going to have like a curriculum for careers, it would be limitless. There's, we can never explain every job, how every sector works. There's unlimited information out there that we could just get across to young people. So to have a framework and objectives, we need to be thinking in terms of skills for them to navigate that information themselves and work out what's relevant. So I think it can almost feel like, well, because there's a limitless amount of stuff to get across, then anything that we can get across is fine, and it's impossible to structure it. But we do need to structure it, and we do need to think about where young people need to be by particular points. So it is a challenge for careers leaders, but I think we're getting closer with, there are different frameworks you can look at. I think the CDI framework is a really helpful guide, things like Skills Builder. There's lots of ways of breaking that information down that aren't about you just have to know every job that's out there and pick the right one for you. We need to shift away from that sort of like job matching mentality.
And sorry, even if you had your own, even if you developed your own as a school or as a, multi-academy trust, at least, and you put some thought into it and you've put that work together, even if you're not using, we use Skills Builder quite a lot in a lot of our stuff, don't we? But, have something there that is that framework, because otherwise, how is your, year 8 geography teacher going to engage with something if it is literally just about, here's a job and here are the skills for that job, well, I'm a teacher. I went from school to uni and back to school, so you can't expect these professionals to just know this stuff. There has to be that framework. Sorry to cut you off.
No, that's exactly it. And I think most of the skills that we're teaching through Skills Builder and other sort of examples such as that, they're transferable skills to so many different industries and sectors as well. So it's a gateway really to get students exposed to that and understand that, and it be a really useful curriculum piece for all teachers to use and take responsibility of, because once students have ownership of those skills and start embedding those, naturally they're going to have those transferable skills that they can use across any industry and sector to be successful.
Yeah, and it's those kind of skills that make people good at their job.
Yeah.
I think, it's partly your technical skills in any role that you're doing, but usually what you're being tested on in a recruitment process is how good you are at the other things, not the stuff that's down on paper in your qualifications and your experience. It's the kind of things that are in the Skills Builder framework. They're what people are looking for, and they're what make you stand out and make you effective and help you progress in your career. And we're not there yet in mainstream education in really foregrounding that and getting young people to understand how important those things are and all of the wider activities they'll do to develop those.
And will continue to be. And now going back to what we were saying around technological disruption and shifting labour markets, I read something, I'm going to butcher this stat, but I read something not that long ago about the sort of average number of career paths that people will sort of have over their lifetimes has just grown hugely. You go back to like the 60s, 70s, you get a job, you're in that career path. Now people are going to job hop a lot more, because it is a much more, like we do a lot of work around green skills and stuff like that, and these digital tech, which has cross-cut across almost every sector. So the ability to be agile in this labour market has grown. But I just want to return to what you were talking about in terms of reducing that logistic burden, right? So how do we take, in your view, and what are sort of Causeway doing around looking at this over stretching on breadth?
Yeah.
Because if I was a careers leader sitting and listening to this, I'd be thinking, this is brilliant, I'd love to.
Yeah.
But I've still got to go and sort these risk assessments out for next week's visits. I've still got to go and phone these 50 employers for the careers fair.
Yeah.
What's your take on this, and where do we need to go?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think of the careers leader I was on the phone to yesterday, who introduced himself and said, I'm the careers leader and also head of history. And you think about,
exactly.
Just combine those two half jobs. And so we've got to be realistic. And I think we're running on the kind of the goodwill and the kind of vision and commitment of those dedicated staff. So we've been partnering with a charity from the Netherlands called Yink, and they've been going for over 20 years, and they have a really interesting model which aligns very closely to how the statutory requirements have just changed here. It's very much modern work experience. So they have a number of programs, and they start early. So they're working right through kind of secondary education. It's all that kind of drip, multiple encounters over time. I mentioned flash internships earlier. So one of the 3 core programs are these flash internships, where you go to an employer for a morning of kind of intense activity. So you'll be in a small group, you'll be up around 10 students, you'll get a tour of the workplace, an introductory talk, and you'll do some kind of hands-on activity. I mentioned the one in the law firm. When I went over to see some of their work in the Netherlands, and one of the flash internships that I observed was at a conference centre. So these small group of students turned up at 9 a.m. They were given an introductory talk by the manager. They walked around, they saw the conference rooms, they saw the kitchens, they saw what goes on there. And then they were working in the kitchens, making the lunches that people were going to eat that day. They were setting up conference rooms, they were restocking coffee stations. So they're doing something practical and hands-on. In the law firm where we ran one of these, obviously they can't get on the phone to clients and do the actual legal work. So they were doing scenario activities, but they weren't just doing... they weren't just seeing the work of lawyers, they were seeing the work of the people that work in tech in the law firm and the people that work in logistics and all the other kind of roles that go on in a big law firm. So those flash internships are really important. But the thing is, you would do multiple of those over Key Stage 3. So you would see different sectors, different types of roles, small employers, large employers. So you get that breadth of encounter. But for the employers, it's fairly easy because once they've designed, with the support of the charity, they've designed those activities that are going to happen, they can run it as many times as they want. And the conference centre that I visited did that flash internship on a almost monthly basis, I think. But it wasn't any effort for them because they're all well kind of schooled in it. The kids came in, they did their thing, they left and were back in school by lunchtime. So I think those flash internships are really key. One of the other activities is a job application training where...
I love this one,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Volunteers from the different employers come into the school and a pair of volunteers works with 12 students. They model a job interview. And they model it not that well. So the kids get a chance to say, well, you need to sit up straight, or you need to give better answers to the questions, all those kind of things. And then they'll go around and students will get a chance to be interviewed and get feedback from their peers and also from those volunteers. So it's not rocket science. It's a classic interview skills workshop where they get kind of practical hands-on activity, but it's outsiders, it's people they don't know. And it's got a bit of formality to it that makes them take it a bit seriously. And we've trialed that in a school in London and it's worked so nicely. And what's key is the volunteers who come in the space of an hour and a half, they see from the first interview to the last, before their eyes, the progress those young people make. From the first one who's sitting there a bit like this to the last one who's sitting up and is trying to give full answers with detail. And they get that buzz, which means they're going to volunteer again.
Yeah.
And they might volunteer to host a flash internship. And then the third activity that's part of the YINC model is career coaching, where young people are matched with another volunteer who's a coach, who gets a bit of coaching training, and they'll do 4 sessions with them. In the Netherlands, they use it to help those students choose their post-16 destinations, whereas here what we're developing is a model where they'll work with students probably in year 10 to help them reflect on all this careers activity and think, where do I want to do my block placement for work experience? What kind of employer? Can I actually approach an employer myself and set up my own placement with the help of this professional? Maybe they're going to use their networks to help me. But we can really start to break down this link between students from backgrounds where they have all these connections and can get great work experience and students from backgrounds where they don't have a load of connections and therefore have a much poorer experience of work experience. Can we break that link and actually get all young people really high quality work experience? But to come back to your actual question, which was about the logistics, a model like that, if we can get employers like they do in the Netherlands to sign up to a membership model where they're kind of buying in for the year at least and they're kind of populating all these encounters that are happening. We work with a network of schools, say this is all happening this year. We're going to fix all the dates with you. Once all the events are set up, we take them to the employers and they click on which ones they're going to either host or provide volunteers for. And the school can be given this program. Okay, it's not completely frictionless. They've got to get the kids there and it's in small groups because that's high impact. So they've got to commit the staffing to get kids out in groups of 10. But they don't have to reinvent the wheel. They don't have to set up the program. They don't have to recruit the range of employers from different places. We can do all of that for them. And then they get a really high quality encounters program.
That sounds brilliant. And it must be so rewarding for the students as well to get that sense of accomplishment. And when they're engaging with that and asking those questions and seeing the reverse of it, I really like that idea. Have you found any particular industries and sectors to be the most popular with the schools that you're being asked time again to try and source and support with?
I think what the schools struggle with is just diversity. So they want a range of employers, they want different sectors, they want different sizes, and they might have a few employers that they work with on an ongoing basis, but it's very hard for them to maintain a diverse program. And that's something that we're in a position where we've got staffing who aren't being pulled away to teach lessons. Our staff can dedicate themselves to setting all that stuff up. That's where we can then, offer that diverse range of employers to schools.
I'm intrigued by something you said right at the top of that, which was around young kids have been going in the Netherlands for 20 years. And over here, we need to put statutory guidance in place in order to, that over there, it's not part of any legislation, is it? It's almost cultural. And I hear this a lot when I speak to people in different education systems where, I mean, you look at the German sort of dual education system and I'm not saying that we should just transplant these things.
Yeah.
What it just seems sometimes frustrating that why do we need to put in place this big statutory guidance, put all this, structural stuff in place in order to get to a point where employers are seeing the value and see what I mean?
Yeah, I think that having been in the education system in this country for my whole career, I suppose, I think one thing that we should hold on to is that we have massively high aspirations as a system. So one of the reasons for kind of the challenges in schools is because actually we have an expectation that schools are going to deliver social justice. Absolutely, as we should. We should have that expectation that young people from all backgrounds via the state education system are going to get really high quality learning and are also going to get really high quality careers education and get those encounters. And that is a massive job. It's right that we have that expectation, but I think we should also be like, the reason we've got such a challenge on our hands is because we've set ourselves that challenge. So good. I'm glad we've set ourselves that challenge. And so therefore, I think the statutory requirement it's going in the right direction. I mean, we talked about overloaded careers leaders before, like staff on the ground in schools, a bit like you find staff on the ground in hospitals, like they are doing 10 times more than is in their job description. They're going the extra mile because they really, really care.
Yeah.
So culturally, we've got that. We've got public sector where people are dedicated and they're really doing the best they can. What the statutory requirements will bring in now in terms of encounters is the ability for those careers leaders to go to their leadership teams and say, we have to now prioritize this. Like our heart was always there. We want to provide all of this, but we're doing a million other things. We've now been given that kind of guidance, right? We're going to prioritize this. We're going to make this happen. The question is, how do we get the demand is going to be sky high now, hopefully, for these encounters. So we've got to get the employers lined up to kind of meet that demand and do it in a way that is systematic and can be done at scale. So maybe there's something on the other end around how do we do something equivalent? Not to say we bring in a law that says they have to do this, but there's some sticks and carrots that can be used to line the because I know employers want to do this as well. They're really keen to do it.
Yeah.
You've got to make it accessible enough. Maybe there's some kind of metric of looking at the amount of volunteer hours that we have per employer per employee. So, you could compare directly across to say who's got a really good score in terms of their volunteering and their openness to do careers education. Maybe we could ring fence part of the skills levy for careers education, skills work. I think everybody wants part of the skills levy.
If I'm an employer listening to this, thinking, I love all this, and I'm also thinking about my bottom line in 5-10 years. I'd love to. It's not as easy for me to recruit from the continent as it was previously if I run a hotel or something like that, But I don't know how to get started, And the idea of ringing round local schools, saying, we're here, that is time intense and effort and something that I might do, but it's something I'm going to get to when I can. What would your sort of call to action be for those businesses thinking, sounds great, love to do it, but how do I even start?
Yeah, and I think it's to reassure businesses they don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are structures out there. Obviously, there's careers hubs. There's all of that thing that's in place. We would love to hear from employers who want to get involved in this kind of work. We have this, our first pilot of this modern work experience program launching in London from September. So get straight in touch with us about that. But from September 2026, we'll be launching in multiple locations around England. So we're really keen to hear from employers who want to get involved in that kind of structured, systematic work. But there's a careers hub in every part of the country. So there are different programs that employers can get involved in, however big or small they are, without having to reinvent it for themselves.
Brilliant. And we always finish our conversations with the case for optimism. So what are you most looking forward to in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think it's going back to what we were talking about around this change in, I suppose, priorities that's come from the new statutory guidance, that this is going to happen. The modern work experience is there. It's going to happen. the appetite is there from schools, and we're going to see like really exciting opportunities for young people, but also for the workforce out there to get involved in volunteering. And you see a lot of volunteering where they go and like pick litter for a day or do something, which is all great. But what I love about careers volunteering is you can do something that's not about escaping from your job. It's about remembering why your job is so great and sharing that love of your workplace, your job, your career with young people.
That is a lovely note to end on. Thank you, Sam. And yeah, thanks for coming in. Great to see you.
Yeah, great to talk.
Thank you.